Hi, everybody. Today, I'm very honored to introduce Coach Julie Luby. Julie is a national board certified and functional medicine certified health coach whose formal education was food science and nutrition. She spent 4 decades as a product development leader in the food industry, where she led creative teams and worked with clients around the world to bring their new food ideas to life. While she loved being immersed in the food world, the grueling and unsustainable pace of it led her to make a conscious decision to create more time to take care of her own health needs and enroll in the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. At about the same time, a family member was struggling with cognitive decline, and she was introduced to the Bredesen Protocol at Dr. Bredesen's first patient immersion in 2017. She now helps clients avoid or reverse chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes and cognitive decline, and alongside Dr. Bredesen, has co-created training modules, teaches the Mastering Mold Toxicity course, and leads 3 support groups for Apollo Health. Her work has been invaluable to my dad and my family, and I'm very grateful for her to be with us here today. So, Julie, I really appreciate you coming on for our listeners. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Great, great. We'll jump right into it. Um, Yeah, can you please tell us a little bit about your coaching practice and how you support Dr. Dale Bredesen?
Sure. People who are trying to prevent or reverse cognitive decline using the Bredesen protocol, and almost all of us are members of Apollo Health, so they are working directly with Dr. Bredesen's company. I coach over Zoom, just like we're talking today, and I do coach people across the country and across the world. I actually have several international clients as well.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, that's great. And we're very appreciative that you're doing this work. Um, how did you get introduced to Dr. Bredesen's work?
So I learned about Dr. Bredesen's work, like you said, in 2017, he had a patient immersion out in California. And my dad was one of the patients that was part of that. I have a brother who's a functional medicine doctor, and he knew Dr. Bredesen through his previous connection with training doctors through IFM.
Mm.
And so I went as sort of a caregiver to the caregiver and sat for 4 days in, about 12 hours a day listening to Dr. Bredesen and all the experts and all the different strategies of the protocol talk about everything that can be done to prevent and reverse this. And it was honestly like drinking from a fire hose. The information was coming at me fast and furiously, but it was really exciting because it was the first time I'd ever heard that something could be about dementia. And, I just sort of thought, like the rest of the world, that once you got Alzheimer's, it was, a degenerative disease and it went in one direction. Um, so uh, that was really my first introduction. And I had just started coach training then. So I decided, that weekend that I was going to find a way to work with Dr. Bredesen and help other families, hopefully not through what my family went through.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Um, you know, it's amazing that you were able to go through that training in 2017 and do it, with family. And I'm sure you're such a great wealth of information for your family going forward because um, from what I had read, it seems like you have a family history of Alzheimer's on both sides of your family. Is
I
that
do, yeah. Both of my grandmothers died with Alzheimer's and dementia. One was diagnosed, one I don't believe was ever diagnosed, but certainly had dementia.
right?
My dad did finally pass away with Alzheimer's. We kind of found Dr. Bredesen's protocol a little too late. I
Yeah.
have an aunt who died. My father's sister died of Alzheimer's. My father's brother has it now.
Yeah.
So I have a pretty strong family history on both sides of my family.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's not easy, but it's definitely amazing that with what you're doing now, I can only imagine how your family tree is going to continue to change. So that's tremendous what you're doing. Um, how is a health coach different from a doctor, and how are they complementary?
Yeah, so health coaching is client-centered process. The client really determines the path and they determine their goals. We sort of support them setting their goals and help to hold them accountable. And We're not medical practitioners, though. So we don't prescribe treatments, we don't read test results, things like that. That's really the doctor's job. So we usually say that the doctor or the licensed practitioner, they handle the what, like they determine the treatment plan, and then the helps the client with the how, like what this giant treatment plan, how are you going to make that work in your life? So that's really what a coach does. But I think a doctor, they don't generally have a lot of people will usually spend time with their health coach than they can with their doctor. I always say we're kind of the most accessible person on their care team.
Yeah.
So we really help them implement what their doctor would like them to do, is kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it's challenging uh, to really execute on some of the things that the doctor wants us to do in between the appointments, and sometimes those appointments are few and far between, or even if they're, every month, there's what do you do with the other 29, 30 days if you have questions, and a health coach is like you said, that accessibility is huge, is huge.
Mhm.
Um, you know, as far as practicing the Bredesen protocol that has these moving parts, um, what would you say as a health coach you're helping people implement the most?
Like you said, it's a complex protocol, and a lot of the parts aren't even really that familiar to people. So health coaches who work in this area, we spend a lot of time helping explaining the protocol and helping people decide what to work on first. The Recode report, has recommendations for next steps. So we kind of help them decide some people's personality, they want to work on the low-hanging fruit first, like the easiest things to change. And that's fine because sometimes they need a quick win. Other people's personality, they want to work on the hardest thing. Uh, and I would say most people need support on the diet. Um, that's kind of universal to everyone.
Yeah.
And then it varies. Some people aren't sleeping well, so they need, a lot of support on sleep hygiene and that sort of thing. Some people need help finding doctors. And so I have a lot of conversations with people about, what kind of doctor to look for and, what are your best ways to find a good Recode doctor. So it can be any of those things.
Yeah. I mean, they're all invaluable. Like you said, uh, it can come off as complex, but when you start working with someone like yourself, or you get just a little bit on the bike and start to learn the information, it always helps if at least one other person in your family is, on the care team is kind of diving into the information. It starts to become kind of intuitive. Um, it's complex but a little simple, but yeah, the execution definitely becomes something that can get challenging, especially with diet, and someone like yourself could be hugely helpful with that. You know, there's the prevention and the reversal protocols, the pre-code and recode. And could you kind of explain a little bit the difference between those two?
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, Precode is really a program for preventing cognitive decline, and it's designed for people who do not have any symptoms yet.
Okay.
So if anyone's noticing that they have cognitive decline or even think they might, they probably don't want to be in Precode because once you start having decline, time is really important. But people who don't have any decline, maybe they have a family history like I do, and they want to know what their risk factors are. They want to know, are they optimized? What should they be working on? That's really who the pre-code program is for. Recode is for, stabilizing and hopefully reversing cognitive decline. And, both of these programs use the Bredesen Protocol, really the same for everyone. It's a bit more urgent though, if you already have decline. And Recode is, every person has some lab tests done. They answer some health history questions. They take some cognitive assessments, and they get their own personalized Recode report. This will tell them exactly what their unique risk factors are in order. And it'll suggest actions to take to, slow down or halt or reverse the decline.
Great, great. Yeah. I think to myself all the time, imagine if pre-code or some sort of prevention protocol like pre-code was what all of us, at age 45 and beyond, were working on and potentially prescribed by every neurologist or every primary physician out there. The landscape of cognitive health and Alzheimer's would drastically be different. Um, I remember our first neurologist visit with my dad. Um, what they tested was a standard metabolic panel, a B12, a TSH, and that was kind of it. Um, Recode calls for a little bit more testing than that. And why is that?
Well, Dr. and years of brain research have determined that there are many causes of cognitive decline. There isn't just one Alzheimer's disease, and it's caused by the same thing in everybody. He's got his metaphor for 36 holes in the roof. Probably people have heard about that, but it refers to just number of parts to this that biochemical changes in our bodies that can be off, that lead us down the path of cognitive decline. And so it's really important to do broad testing to determine, each person's risk factor. Is it vascular? Is it insulin resistance? Do they have toxins? Have they had head trauma? Do they have inflammation? It's usually some combination of that. It's usually not just one. But that's, without doing intuitive testing, never uncover all of those different risks. And by putting it all together in the algorithm, they can, determine and give you the report that outlines all your risks.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The I think when I first heard of the Bredesen Protocol, when it got to that 36 holes metaphor, it made so much sense. It kind of whacked me over the head. And the first thing I thought was, wow, this is amazing. The second thing I thought was, wow, um, why isn't more expanded testing for all sorts of conditions kind of standard, but especially for something like Alzheimer's? It makes sense that there's all these contributing factors. There isn't one driver. And then you think about, imagine if all of this testing was covered by insurance, right? So
Yeah.
that'd be tremendous. And I think that the work you guys are doing are definitely moving us in that direction, which is awesome. Um, so how important is diet in this program?
Um, for most people, it will be important. Certainly, if they're eating a standard American diet, that can be very helpful to the brain. Um, if there's a diet, cognitive decline happens when our brains don't have enough fuel, and getting people into mild ketosis can give them ketones, which is a really great fuel for the brain. It's an alternative source of fuel for the brain. And that's why the diet is so important, because the brain often, Dr. Bredesen will say, it's a problem of energetics. Brain just doesn't fuel it needs to do what it's supposed to do. And so diet is really key to that. A lot of people will find that they get clarity, and they will just feel quite different when they do, reduce the carbs in their life and reverse any insulin resistance and some tones on board. So I think the diet is especially important if people already have noticeable cognitive decline. Then they really need to be focusing on that. But probably all of us need a little bit of the diet tweak if we're not already doing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I get a lot of I get a lot of questions about the dive, just people who have, asked, what are you guys doing? Because at this point, my whole family at this point, my whole household is practicing some variant of the protocol, and not, it's not the same level of expanded testing so regimented as my dad, but what we are doing the most of is the dietary component, right? Because it's the thing that we feel we have the most control and influence over. Um, and it translates into labs. If you know my wife or myself are
Mhm.
getting labs only once or twice a year, then we can see how diet is affecting that. Um, and yeah, I've heard the criticism of, you can't attack the carbs, you can't remove all the carbs, you can't be in chronic ketosis, but it's not really about that, right? It's about metabolic flexibility. Can you talk
Yeah,
a little bit about
absolutely.
metabolic flexibility?
Yeah, that's a really great point. The idea is not to be in deep ketosis all the time. The idea is we want the body and the brain, basically all of our tissues, to be able to burn either glucose or ketones. And the way to do that is to get into ketosis and introduce ketones and make sure the cellular system is able to switch over and forth. But um, really, when you're doing the diet correctly, you want to make sure you're, showing ketone levels of, 1.0 millimole or higher once a day. But it doesn't mean that you're in ketosis all the time. If you tested continuously throughout the day, you would not be in ketosis. But achieving that once a day means that your body is, able to go back and forth and switch between burning carbs and burning fat, burning ketones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's powerful, and yeah, we can feel it. There is a big difference, being able to switch off and be able to, I guess, be more in line with our ancestors.
Mhm.
So great.
Sure.
Yep. Yep. What do you see as clients' biggest challenge in implementing the protocol? Is it mostly the diet? Is it anything else?
It really is different for everyone. Most of the Bredesen protocol is about changing habits, and that can for and I will say it's especially hard for people if they already have some cognitive decline because sometimes they can't even remember they're supposed to be doing things differently from what they've kind of automatically been doing in life. Um, but I would say the diet is probably the most challenging. Um, And people struggle with sleep or they struggle with stress, and those also affect your diet and how you're using the foods that you're putting into your body. So they all work together. Um, it's changing patterns is hard for people, and changing habits is hard, and that's where setting goals is important, and changing things slowly can be important too. Making you don't have to jump from how you're eating today to a perfect keto flex diet, but I always people first start adding in the foods that they're not eating enough of. So let's get more greens in there. Let's kind of move in the right direction rather than telling them, you have to take away these things right now, because that, like deprivation. So
Yeah.
we want to get them eating as many healthy foods as we can, and then kind of slowly changing their digestion. You have to let your gut bacteria catch up to things, so you don't want to too quickly. But changing eating patterns is tough for people, and it
Yeah.
can actually help to, like you're doing it as a family, that can actually really help to have people doing it.
Yeah. 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 No, thank you. Yeah. You know, I guess you spoke right to the heart of it. It's habits. And changing habits at any age is I'd say challenging, but it's doable. But you're absolutely right. When you've got accountability around you, especially loving people around you, but even if you don't, if you have a care partner on your team who's specialized in helping with um, habit change, like yourself, like a coach,
Mhm.
like a health coach, it makes it so much easier because I think the hardest thing about any habit change or any protocol is probably the feeling of overwhelm. And what
Mhm.
overwhelms me is not what overwhelms you or overwhelms anyone. It's different for everybody. And being able to overcome overwhelm with kind of help having someone else who can see the forest for the trees, just simplify it, make it chunk sized,
Yep.
digestible. Um, yeah, we started the protocol back in 2018, a little bit before the coaching program was available for everybody. And
Mhm.
it was a little overwhelming for us. The team at the time was, myself, my mom, and my dad. And, we just committed and said, let's just try to learn as much as we can this week and implement one thing this week. And then we'll implement one thing next week, and it was primarily around the diet. So, uh,
Mhm.
making it digestible I think is key. And, we hit our, I think we stubbed our toe a lot from here to now. But a coach at the time would have helped accelerate that path. Um, you teach a course for Apollo called Mastering Mold Toxicity. What role does mold play in cognitive health?
We're finding that a really high percentage of people in the program have that toxic subtype as one of their top three risk factors, even their top two risk factors. And mold is a really, really common toxin that people are exposed to. It's really common among most of the people I work with. Um, Exposure to mold and other toxins can cause cognitive decline in kind of a variety of ways. Some of these mold toxins are actually direct neurotoxins, like they damage the nerves and the neural connections in the brain. A lot of these mold toxins are suppressors. They can also cause inflammation in the body and the brain. Some of them have a huge impact on your hormones, and they can mess up your glucose control.
Yeah.
So these toxins have a wide-ranging effect, and many of these effects can eventually then lead to cognitive decline.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it- you teaching this is so crucial. I can only imagine how many people you're running into with this showing up. I myself, the more just friends and family, the more things have popped up, and we've said, "Hey, maybe test your house for mold." Whether it's their kids or my kids. Mold is something we've had to deal with more than I thought we'd have to. And
Mhm.
it's kind of amazing because I think it was Richie Schumacher, Dr. Richie Schumacher, who said something along the lines, and I don't know what stat he was pulling from, but he said something around the lines of 78, at least 78% of all buildings in the US have been water damaged at some point and have some
Yeah.
mold somewhere in some corner. And um, every home I've lived in that I've started testing, over the last several years, it has had mold somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's something we're
Really common.
very common, and it's still something that we're working on with my dad. It popped back up. We thought we remediated everything, and then I forgot about the mini split and the
Oh, right.
the heat pump, and it's not HVAC, it's not ducting or anything like that. We were cleaning out the air the actual filters on it, but it had not been maintenance. It had not been opened up, and there was
Mhm.
condensation. And it's just amazing how many vectors we can have inside our homes for mold if we're not careful and how it's affecting us. So yeah, we need more people like you teaching others about how mold affects us because it's so silent. It can creep up on us. We don't have to see it. We can't smell it.
Right.
Yep.
Not always. Yeah, it can be very invisible. We had I had personally had some serious gut a few years ago, and my doctor finally tested me for mold toxins, and I had them in my body. And once we discovered them in my body, I wanted to know if I was currently being exposed in either my home or I was working outside the house at that point. And so I tested both, and you know, a very thorough inspection of our house. We had five hidden sources of mold. They were not visible at all. They were behind walls or, behind a cabinet or whatever. I would have never known about that.
Yeah.
First found the mold toxins in my body and then had a very thorough inspection of my house.
Yeah. 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 No, it's amazing. It's really endemic. We had a, we're, thankfully. this is easy to remediate. We have a family member who had a sinus infection that had not gone away for months and months, and after antibiotics and everything, and we said, maybe test the house for mold, maybe do some mold toxin testing, lit it up, and fast forward, remediated the massive mold problem with the HVAC system in the attic. And let's just say that the house has been remediated, but the house is now on the market. So it's something that everyone should definitely walk away with saying, maybe we should test the house for mold and just kind of cross that off.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, people can test their bodies for mold first. I know if you're following the Shoemaker protocol, they don't usually test for urinary mycotoxins, but you can. So you
yep.
know what your body burden is, or you can test your, I think you can kind of make an assumption.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Either one will lead you down the right path eventually. So it can be done either way.
While you're on that, because I'm with you. I think the urinary metabolites are really important. What do you like to see with your clients in order to help them through that? Is it the mosaic or the real-time organic acids test and mycotox, or is there any special tests that you think is good?
Yeah, so I've sat in on several consultations with Dr. Neil Nathan, with some of my clients and their doctors. And so it's been like a master class in learning about mold from one of the experts. He really likes the real-time test if you're going to be testing body. He thinks it's the most accurate. And it tests for 5 different classes of mycotoxins. There's more than one toxin within some of those classes. So it gives you a pretty good idea of, whether you're carrying around some of the most damaging mycotoxins in your body.
Yeah.
So I like that one. The mosaic test before. Dr. Nathan believes that real time is better. And I'll be honest, for anyone who's on Medicare, um, real time test is covered by Medicare.
Great.
So that's kind of nice. Most states, well, most of the states you have to have a doctor order the test. There are some direct order states, so you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
I also like people to test their houses with a dust test or
Yes.
an another ERMI type test. I think
Yes.
that's the best way to get that first pass as to whether your house has a problem or not. And I like the dust test because they give a nice analysis of it. You kind of get a feel for how dusty or how moldy mycotoxiny is compared to other houses.
Yeah.
So I like that. And I mean, it doesn't tell you where the problem is, but it tells you if you have a problem and whether you need to
Yeah.
step.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the Ermi's been invaluable. We did the air testing in the past, and
Mhm.
it's very I don't think I've done an air test where it ever came positive. But then you still see it in the urinary metabolites. You're saying it's got to be somewhere where there's got to
Mhm.
be exposure. And then you do an ERMI, the dust test, and then you find it. So
Yeah, the guys that we inspect did some studies and they would test homes. They would do an air test. They kind of did this study, and they would also know whether they found sources of mold. And I think somewhere between like 70 and 75% of the homes they tested had a clean air test, but they clearly found sources of mold in the house. So that air test canister
yeah,
set up in the middle of the room is really not the right way to do it.
yeah, not very sensitive. Yeah, I forget where I heard it, but I heard that whole air testing industry is, and nothing against the air testing industry, but it favors landlords. Uh,
Yes, it's the one landlords use.
there you go, there you go. So,
Yeah.
anyways, um, and yes, the Dr. Neil Nathan approach has worked best for my dad, and I think that's a great approach, slow and steady.
Mhm.
Um, now, uh, for this kind of goes into this concept of Dr. Bredesen's. You talked about different types of Alzheimer's, and mold toxicity kind of folds into this type 3 subtype. Could you talk a little bit about what type 3 Alzheimer's is? No.
Toxins. Any of these toxins can cause it. It can be heavy metals like mercury or lead. It can be anesthetics, like you had surgery and you had general anesthetic. It can be environmental toxins like smoke or air pollution or plastics, and of course mycotoxins, which are the toxins produced by mold. And I think they also lump in with that like tick-related toxins or tick-borne illness like Lyme disease and the co-infections that come with Lyme disease. And like the risk three, everybody's exposed to these toxins in their life, but the risk for having type 3, toxic Alzheimer's is also increased by having a poor detoxification system. It can even be, if you have constipation and you're not moving things through your body, that can be an issue. But there's about a quarter of the population that have genetics that make us lousy detoxer. I'm one of them. I just,
Okay.
because of my genetics, I just don't detox very well. So my body needs help.
Yeah.
And we tend to be the ones who accumulate toxins in our body. So it's, important to you don't need to know your genetics. You can just kind of figure out if you're type 3, you may have this issue. And type 3 is kind of different from the other types because it often presents different. People often have depression and anxiety. And instead of just pure memory issues, they have trouble calculating, they have trouble organizing, sort of that executive function, following instructions,
Yep.
word finding can be affected. So, and this can be in addition to memory issues, but a lot of times type 3 people will present differently from the beginning. And Dr. Bredesen will say type 3 is really the most complicated of the subtypes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's also pretty common.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think the concept itself of type 3 is so important uh, today because for a while, people have been associating insulin resistance. We've had with Alzheimer's, we've heard Alzheimer's be type 3 diabetes. Not to minimize that side of it, but um, I think it's been underappreciated how many different environmental toxins and/or infections um, have been driving cognitive decline that then gets diagnosed as Alzheimer's. And to confirm, a lot of the early onset Alzheimer's diagnoses can be type 3. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, if you're noticing symptoms in your, 50s, early 60s, even before that,
Yeah.
it can often be type 3. I know that I've heard the stories of people in their 30s coming in with just, really bad cognitive issues and find out they're eating sushi 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And the combination of, mercury from the tuna and maybe arsenic from the rice,
Yeah.
they basically have heavy metal, contamination and
Yeah.
heavy metal toxicity.
Yeah.
So it does show up early. And also, I've noticed that in people who, um, this is also a common type that shows up in people who don't carry an ApoE4 allele.
Yeah.
So when people are ApoE3/3 and they have cognitive decline, it's often due to toxins.
Yeah. 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 That's really helpful for everybody to hear. Um, yeah, I mean, my dad, early onset, type 3 was the one he lit up the most on the Recode report. And
Mhm.
you just had a constellation of mold, mercury toxicity, amalgams, occupational exposure. Uh,
Mhm.
so this is where the expanded testing is so helpful because, you have to know uh, where to start putting your energy with the time that you have. And if you can identify some of these drivers quickly, then you can start working on them, and it's huge.
Yeah, and if I can put in a little plug for if you are experiencing cognitive decline, it's really important to go to that recode level
Yes.
rather than pre-code because the heavy metals are not tested in the pre-code battery of tests.
Uh,
There's a couple of biomarkers for toxicity, but if you're experiencing that decline, you really want to
yeah.
rule out type 3, and that's only tested with in the first round at least with the recode battery of tests.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah, exactly. No, that's 100% right. Yeah. If, if I mean, if we could wave a magic wand, we had no limitations, and everybody in the U.S. could have access to expanded testing like Recode's cognoscopy, right? If everybody had a cognoscopy, man, we could prevent so much cognitive decline or reverse it in the MCI state, the mild cognitive impairment stages. So yes, definitely um, recode report and go to the recode as soon as possible if there's any symptoms that show up in a loved one or yourself is important. Um, you know, you not only support participants on the protocol, but you also support their care partners, their caregivers. So, could you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Yeah, I work with quite a few of the care partners. It's probably mostly spouses, but also some adult children who's, they're helping their parents live the protocol. And sometimes I'll have both. I'll have an entire family on my Zoom screen because, as you know, putting your care team together, you can't really have too many people working with you to help you. So sometimes the adult children have certain roles and the spouse has a certain role. Um, Sometimes I work with the care partner and the client together, especially if the client, is still doing pretty well. And sometimes I will just support the care partner because sometimes I work with people whose loved one is, pretty far down the path and they need the support as much as their loved one does. So I kind of work, with care partners in lots of different ways.
Yeah, yeah, great. If there was one thing you could tell all care partners, caregivers out there, what would it be?
Probably the first thing I would tell them is take care of yourself.
Yeah,
Your health is important. You can't take care of your loved one if you become sick. And it's that put on your oxygen mask before you help somebody else. Really, really true.
yeah,
And then I think the second thing I would probably tell them is try to implement as much of the protocol with your loved one as possible.
yes,
It's just easier to do it together.
yeah,
Eat the same food, exercise with them, develop good sleep hygiene together, practice, do some stress management together, do the Kirtan Kriya meditation together,
yeah,
even exercising your brains together, read to each other and discuss what you're reading. There's so many things you can do together, and it's really helpful to the person with the cognitive decline. But the diet is healthy for pretty much everyone, and everybody will probably feel better. And I'll be honest, I've run into some care partners who have some decline themselves, so most of this is very helpful to them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I forget exactly the statistic, but I think I saw something like at some point a caregiver of someone diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's, I think it's like 60 or 66% of them go on to develop cognitive decline themselves from all the
Yeah.
stress or whatever it is that they kind of it built up in that time. And it is a challenging time, especially if you don't have the right support system or the right support strategies, like you're
Hmm.
saying, to take care of yourself
Hmm.
um, is super important. Um, what do you have to say to those who are a little bit skeptical, to someone who's a little bit skeptical or a little hesitant to start working on a lifestyle treatment program like Recode to improve their cognitive function?
Yeah, I think I want people to focus on their motivation. So think about what you want to do in 5 to 10 years that you need your healthy brain and your healthy body for. And then help try to keep that motivation in mind. And when I coach with people, this is what we do in our first session. We talk about this. We talk about what brings you joy. What do you want to still be able to do 5 or 10 years from now? And then we'll bring that up during coaching sessions. How does this align with your goals? And how does this align with what you told me you want to be able to do? Um, I think the other thing about, if you're skeptical or hesitant is conventional medicine doesn't really have a lot to offer to either prevent or reverse symptoms.
Yeah.
Um, and if you already have some decline, time is of the essence. So
Yep.
it's important to get started. And this is kind of the best only program out there.
That's
So
it.
there's very little to lose, I think, in
That's it.
trying it.
That is absolutely right. I mean, it's very minimal to zero downside and just unlimited upside because you're right. What is the alternative? There really is none. there is no other that I know of. There may be. I don't think so. I mean, I've worked hard to try to find as much as I could, and I think you've probably done the same. And there just isn't another protocol with that is as evidence-based and uh, empirically data-backed studies. And the proof is in the pudding. I'm excited to see what this new clinical trial is gonna
Mhm.
suss out here. But yeah, and the other thing, like you said, they're not being. Look, God bless all the doctors and everyone that supports the conventional side of this.
Mhm.
Um, but it really is diagnose and adios, and every neurologist will tell you that, right? There is really nothing that can be offered, and the alternative to trying something like this, the financial implication. I hear a lot, it's an investment. In the state of Massachusetts, nursing care, or nursing home care is about $136,000 a year right now.
Yeah.
And it becomes an inevitability, unless you can figure some things out. And, when it comes to making an investment with time, habits, and the financial piece, um, I think it's a tremendous return on investment now. And in addition, with my family, we've learned so much. It's been since 2018 to now, we've learned so much. We've gotten in much better health. We didn't know anything about
Yeah.
nutrition. We didn't know anything about any of this. And
Mhm.
I can say it's helped my kids, it's helped me, my wife, it's helped my mom, it's helped other family members who've gotten curious enough to look into it and learn from it. So it's it has a huge positive ripple effect, and I strongly encourage I to piggyback what you said, I strongly encourage everyone to look into it, even if you don't have cognitive decline, because you'll become overall healthier.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of longevity programs out there and everything. And, longevity is kind of useless if your brain isn't working. So we want to make sure we
That's
want brain longevity as well.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Um, what's the next step every listener should take to improve their cognitive and brain health after finishing this interview?
So the first thing I would say, if they haven't done it already, is go take that free CQ cognitive assessment on the Apollo website. Um, find out how your brain's doing if you don't already know, because that can be, the kick in the pants that some people need to get going. It's also a great baseline to see what you can do. So it's a good assessment. It's a kind of a point in time, but it's like a sorting hat with Harry Potter. It will sort you into should you go pre-code or should you go recode.
Right.
And sometimes just getting the results of this assessment can motivate people to take the next step.
Yeah.
Um, if people aren't familiar with this, hopefully if they're watching your videos, they are. Get a copy of the End of Alzheimer's program or the First Survivors of Alzheimer's if you want to really be, encouraged and motivated by the fact that people are surviving this.
Yeah.
Um, those are the first steps I would take. If somebody is familiar, they've already done the CQ assessment, I would say just take a good hard look at what you're eating and
Yeah.
how much you're exercising. Exercise is a pretty magic bullet.
Yeah.
Um, so those two things, and if you're not sleeping well, take a look at that. So eating, sleep, and exercise are probably the three main pillars. And of course, stress fits into all of those.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, end of Alzheimer's program, very valuable resource. I remember reading the first end of Alzheimer's for the first time. It just, completely transformed my view of everything. And I would also add in to what you said, if anybody has 2 hours on a weekend or an hour and a half on a weekend, Memories for Life.
Memories for life, sure.
Watch Dr. Dale Bredesen and some of these survivors um, recount their time and their stories in this, and a lot of great resources that you guys have provided over the years for everyone to learn as much as they can about this. So thank you for what you're doing. What is currently exciting you in your work today?
Well, I mean, the first thing is I'm just excited to work with so many incredible people. I guess I love so that I love all my clients and I love working with them and um, I love how hard they're working to, improve their health. Um, but I'm also really kind of excited to work in an area where new discoveries are still being made. I come out of a product development world. I did product development for 40 years, and so I'm very science based and science backed. It's a lot of experimentation and discovery and all of that, and it's I look back 10 or 15 years, we just didn't know this stuff. And so for me, that's really a change. And, especially when I look at my family history, what could my dad's life have been like had we known sooner?
Yeah.
And what could we have helped? Now he lived to be 89. He lived a really great long life. He was an ApoE. So
Wow.
I think it was a testament to his incredible healthy lifestyle. My mom is a dietitian, ate home cooked meals. And so I think, you know, he was really probably pretty fortunate. He was exercising before it was cool, that kind of stuff. So I think he lived a really, because of that, he didn't get dementia until he was way into his late 80s. But, I sort of wonder what it could be like. And I also am really full that I will witness changes in treatment that will help my kids. I'm living this as much as I can now to improve my health, but I really believe there's going to be changes out there and it'll be more than the Bredesen Protocol, things that we can do to reverse and to prevent cognitive decline. So I'm really excited about the research that's and I think, as Dr. Bredesen says, we have a great armamentarium now, but I think it's going to get even bigger. And I really hope by the time my kids are old that this just won't even be a problem anymore.
Yeah,
So, and if we could figure out a way for insurance to pay for it, that would be even better, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. That's the mission. And I have confidence we'll get there.
I hope
It's not a
so.
matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think discussions like this help move that along and everything that you're doing. You and Apollo you're part of a small group, a small but growing group of pioneers. It is exciting. This is, you know, I mean, it's simple. It's cut and dry. This is the first program that has shown the reversal of cognitive decline, reversal is of diagnosed Alzheimer's disease, and more and more people are coming out of the other end uh, with not only their cognitive health changed, but I think what's most exciting about this is that it's always great when a drug can do some tremendous things for people. Um, but in that model, it's very passive. And
Mhm.
in this, um, if you can buy in and people around you can buy in, it's not just about the cognitive health. It's like the journey of changing the habits is transformative
Mhm.
to everyone who's involved. And I think this community that Dr. Bredesen has kind of attracted around himself um, is is it excites me to see the level of commitment and the level of just the transformation that people have had not only in themselves but in their circles. So yeah, this is huge. Thank you for everything
Mhm.
that you're doing. Um, where can people find you and your resources?
Yeah, probably the best place is to go to my website. It's cogwellcoaching. And I don't know if you do show notes, but
Yes.
I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. It's a very simple website. I'm a simple person, but hopefully the information you need is there. You'll find my email address there, and I think even my phone number is there, so people can contact me there. And there's a contact page if anybody wants to reach out.
Great, great. Yes, yep. We're going to link all that below. We're going to link to Apollo and some great resources for everybody, so people can get educated and can come and hopefully connect with you because you're such a huge wealth of information for anybody who's looking to prevent and or reverse some cognitive decline. Um, you know, there there are not many of you yet, but I really I'm looking forward to seeing a vast number of more coaches because doctors are very important, but I think this this model of complementing that approach with a coach is so important because um, we cannot execute on some of these habit changes without this, and sometimes we need someone else who can help us with that. Um,
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time we need that, so that's huge.
And we're training up more coaches all the time. And, we do some coach mentoring, and there's a lot of sharing between the coaches. Coaching is kind of a solitary job. Most of us work from home or work privately, but we do get together and we do talk and we do share, and we are trying to educate each other and share our experiences. So we're developing a great, um, you know, group of coaches within the Recode program.
Yeah,
So
great.
hopefully people will reach out and find the one that works best with them.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, you guys are on the ground, so that's awesome. Yeah, great work. Well, hey, thank you for everything you're doing, everything you've been doing, and everything I know you'll continue to do. Thank you for making the time. I know you're very busy, and yeah, looking forward to connecting down the road. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thanks,
Thanks,
Ed.
Bill.